Thank you very much. First of all, I have to thank Dr. Boaz Ganor and the ICT for inviting me once more and be back home. It is a great opportunity not only to once again have the privilege of exchanging with so many interesting academics and scholars, but also for me to express my personal and intellectual commitment and support to Israel. And indeed, as part of that, to keep alive our exchange, I refer to Universidad Juan and Elcano Royal Institute exchanges with the ICT. Actually, this year we have Asaf Moghadam with us. And again, it's a real pleasure to be here. When in the past, when I came, I took this opportunity to provide some information and unusual, perhaps for those of you who are not focusing your attention on Southern Europe or Southern Mediterranean, European Mediterranean countries, and provide you some data on jihadism in one of the European countries most affected by this terrorism, which is Spain. And this is empirical data, so it might be used for comparative purposes as well. Now, allow me to remember you that it is not often reminded that Spain was next to the UK and to a lesser extent Germany and Italy, the place where Al-Qaeda penetrated first within Western Europe. The Al-Qaeda cell in Spain was founded in 1994 by Abu Musab al-Suri, among two others, and was led by Abu Dada, Syrian Abu Dada, as from 1995, when Abu Musab al-Suri and Sheikh Saleh left Spain. The first jihadist arrested in my country was arrested in 1995 in Barcelona. He was a member of the GIA, and the first ever dismantled cell in Spain was in Valencia, also in the Mediterranean coast in 1997, also a GIA-related cell. But remember, in those days, the GIA was very close to Al-Qaeda. Actually, Abu Musab al-Suri went to London precisely to take charge of the GIA's magazine, doctrinal magazine. Then, as you all know, we had the Madrid bombings, 191 people killed, plus an additional police officer who was murdered when some of the bombers decided to kill themselves, surrounded by the police on April the 3rd in the city of Leganés, next to Madrid. Then we have, and this is again not very well known, the suicide bomb plot in Barcelona in January 2008, which fortunately was thwarted thanks to a very successful intelligence cooperation between France and Spain. So throughout this period, I will end my analysis on the year 2012, because as from 2013, everything is quite different. The jihadist mobilization in Spain, as in Italy, related to the IS and to the Syria-Iraq conflict, is changing a lot of the parameters I'm going to present you now here. And that, since I will be taking part in the workshop led by Dr. Ali Carmon tomorrow, I will lead up part for presentation, and it's great to finally see you again early tomorrow. A total of 840 individuals were convicted or died in the suicide explosion in Leganés between 1996 and 2012 in my country. That means one-fifth of all those individuals arrested for jihadist terrorism offenses in Spain. So the data I'm going to present you is based on those individuals and was extracted from police and judicial documents concerning all the criminal proceedings opened in Spain on jihadist terrorism since the middle 90s. Maybe you will find of interest to notice that contrary to all this talking about independent cells and independent individuals, leaderless jihad, and so on and so forth, the fact is that we have not single individual convicted in Spain that was an independent jihadist or was a member of an independent jihadist cell. All the 84 individuals convicted in Spain, jihadists convicted in Spain for terrorism offenses, were either part of an organization based outside Spain, were part of a cell belonging to an organization based outside of Spain, or were part of a cell having some kind of relation with an organization based outside Spain. Obviously, this empirical finding has theoretical implications concerning what is known often as the Hoffman-Seichmann debate. This will not be a surprise to you. All the individuals convicted in my country were men, age between 25 and 39 at the time of their arrest, whereas the gender data is similar to the one you will find for other cases such as the UK. This is our comparative case for exactly the same period of time. In the case of Spain, individuals tend to be slightly older than jihadists in the UK at the time of arrest. This is due to the fact that in the UK we have mainly, jihadists are mainly second and third generations, where in the case of Spain, predominantly first generation immigrants. By the time they come to Spain, they have an average age of 25.1 years. So it is easy to understand that will not be before that. As an average, I say, they will likely be arrested. Interestingly, 7 out of every 10 are married. This fact was totally unknown with respect to, for instance, members of ETA. They tend to consider marriages and family responsibilities are deeply incompatible with terrorist militancy. But for jihadists, militancy and family are part of the same religious duty. They understand that it's part of the one and the same kind of religious commitment. It is true that sometimes jihadists do marry women for instrumental purposes, mainly to have better access to nationality, to obtain residential papers, to strengthen intergroup loyalties, and so on. So contrary to the UK, contrary to France, those who had been convicted in Spain for jihadist terrorism purposes over the past decade or more were foreigners. So this is not a homegrown phenomenon. Homegrown phenomenon takes most of the literature on jihadism in Europe. just Spain is an important country concerning jihadism, and jihadism in Spain is not a homegrown phenomena when we refer to the individuals who are involved. They came to Spain late. They were not born there. They were not socialized in the country. And as I say, you will find this quite different from the UK case. In Spain, most of them are Algerians and Moroccans. Actually, Algerians are 29%, Moroccans are at 29%. Exactly the same percent. Interestingly, we have in Spain 15 times more Moroccans than Algerians, and yet Algerians are far overrepresented in jihadist cells and groups in the country, obviously among those who were convicted for jihadist terrorism purposes. In the UK, half of those who have been convicted for jihadist terrorism offenses since the 90s were born in Spain, and 8 out of every 10 were British nationals. In Spain, only 2 out of every 10 were Spanish nationals, and only 5% of them were born in the country. This, however, has changed as from the year 2013, when jihadist mobilization is affecting more Spaniards, Muslim Spaniards, than Muslims living in Spain and having no Spanish nationality. When it comes to education, all we can say is that that particular category shows an amazing diversity among jihadists convicted in Spain. For instance, we have as many individuals lacking formal education as we do have individuals with university education. Interestingly, in 1 of every 4 cases, the occupation is not known. But this is not to mean that they are unemployed. They get money, they get help, they make a living. They are just fully devoted to the cause, to the militancy. 20% of all those individuals had previous criminal record for offenses other than terrorism, a fact which is indicating that prisons might be a place where some of these people get radicalized, but also that jihad cells often look for individuals whose skills might be transferred to jihadist purposes other than just private criminal gains. Jihadists in Spain are not uniformly distributed across the territory, nor even when considering the areas where the Muslim population tends to concentrate. The good news is that the phenomenon appears in clusters, and actually 4 cities, just 4 cities, amount for the vast majority of the individuals who were jihadist activists in the country since the 90s, including, of course, Madrid and Barcelona. When radicalization took place concerning all those individuals, if we answer that question with respect to the personal life cycle, then the vast majority of them started the process of radicalization when they were under 30, and that was often related to historical events, when Algeria, when Bosnia, when Chechnya, nowadays when the conflict in Syria and Iraq is going on. Now, where are violent radicalization happening? Well, it is true on the one hand that, as I say before, that when looking at the social demographical profile of jihadis in Spain, you can easily deduce that they are not homegrown terrorists. But when it comes to radicalization, the radicalization process itself was a homegrown radicalization process, as 7 out of every 10 partially or totally radicalized within the country, particularly in Madrid and Barcelona. And increasing, we found already in the late years, consider under this study that Ceuta, the Spanish enclave in North Africa, was already a hot spot for radicalization and recruitment. And events as from 2013, we already had 4 major police operations against networks radicalizing and recruiting people to be sent to Iraq and Syria. Ceuta remains a hot spot for radicalization and recruitment. Metropolitan areas are well overrepresented. Individuals or Muslims living in metropolitan areas are well overrepresented over Muslims living in rural areas, where they tend to exchange more with local population. In large metropolitan areas, they tend to segregate, and it is easier for radicalization agents to operate. Where do they operate? Private homes, above all, and then worship places. In the UK, you would probably say worship places and then private homes, but remember that the institutionalization of Islam in Spain started much later than in the UK. Prisons are becoming a prominent space for radicalization and recruitment in my country. Or let's say this in other words, we have not single case among all those 84 individuals, not single case of self-radicalization. Not single case. I mean, is this to mean they never watch internet, they never watch YouTube, they never enter jihadist? They did, but ultimately radicalization became a face-to-face interaction, where a charismatic radicalizing agent play a decisive role, and the process was in the vast majority of cases a top-down processes. As an average, it takes between 4 and 5 years, although we have cases where radicalization took just a couple of months, and we have cases where radicalization took 9, even 10 years. Now, since I just the very last slide I'm going to show you. This is my most recent book, not yet published in English, but will be published in English, I hope very soon. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to share with you some of the findings of my over 5 years research in over 10 countries of the world, with documents and personal interviews, which were documents which were not there when the Madrid bombings, criminal proceedings were closed in 2006, which were not there when the convictions were handed on 2007. And I will not go into detail, among other things, because Dr. Elcano has already published precisely on the ICT website a book review of this volume. But allow me to say, for those who have a very well-formed already idea about the Madrid bombings that maybe you have to rethink common wisdom. The decision to attack Spain was adopted in Karachi on December 2001, 1 month after the Abu Dada cell, the Al-Qaeda cell in Spain, which was established in 1994, was finally dismantled after evidence showed that there was a link between the Hamburg cell and the Spanish Al-Qaeda cell. And even even Mohammed Atta came to Spain, as you know, a few weeks before the 9/11 attacks to finalize preparations with Ramzi bin al-Bish. They met in two towns in Catalonia, and obviously they were the guests of the Spanish Abu Dada Al-Qaeda cell. This decision was ratified in Istanbul on February 2002 at a meeting attended by delegates of North African Al-Qaeda related organizations, which just lost the facilities and the infrastructures they were enjoying in Afghanistan, and they decided to relocate jihad, and that had direct implications for Morocco and Spain, first in Casablanca and then in Morocco, and then in Madrid. And the Madrid train bombing network actually had 3 main components, and one of them was introduced by the Moroccan Islamic Combatant Group, although the main component and the starting component was made out by individuals who were part of the Abu Dada cell, but for one of the terrorists who were not arrested as a result of the police operation which dismantled this group in November 2001. Those who were not arrested by, plus an additional important member who was in Iran at the time, decided to take revenge against Spain. And it was not until the summer, early fall of 2003 that Al-Qaeda senior leadership decided to endorse the project, because they thought that the ongoing revenge plan was also instrumental for them to create divisions among Western nations and among people and governments in the context of the Iraq war. The date for the bombings was adopted on October 19th in Brussels, and the elections in Spain weren't even called in those days. The contact between the network and Al-Qaeda Central was Amer Assisi, in those days second to Al-Qaeda's External Operation Command, and just a couple of years before, the second in the Abu Dada Al-Qaeda's cell in Spain, the man who avoided arrest because he was in Iran, taking care of individuals recruited in Spain to be sent to training camps in Afghanistan. Thank you very much indeed.